Receiving a letter from a bailiff is never a nice experience, especially the thought of them coming to your home. But what happens if the debt isn't actually yours, but instead belongs to your son? Let's look at this and see whether or not a bailiff can take your property to cover your son's debt. Just to be clear, I don't give financial or legal advice, I'm just making sure that you have access to information that you need to make informed decisions. If you're contacted by a bailiff, then the first thing you should do is determine for sure if you're dealing with a debt collector or a bailiff. Debt collectors and bailiffs are very different. Whilst they both want to collect your debt, they have very different legal rights. Look closely at the individual or company name on the letter and perhaps do some digging online to be sure. How do you find out if the bailiff is legitimate? If you don't recognise the bailiff's name, then you need to check its legitimacy. Firstly, the letter should have your correct name, address and information about the debt that's owed. It also needs to notify you at least 7 days in advance of the bailiff visiting you. Next, it has to be sent to you by a registered bailiff. You can check if the bailiff is registered by visiting the bailiff register. Once you've determined that the bailiff is legit, you can move on to confirming that the debt is valid. If you know that your son has already paid the debt, then contact the bailiff immediately and let them know that the debt is already paid. Be sure to have some evidence of this on hand when you contact them. This process could take a little bit of time, so remember to ask them to freeze the accounts. You don't want them to show up at your door in the meantime. So, can a bailiff take things from your home? While bailiffs can seize possessions from your home in order to secure a debt, they can't take pets and they can't take anything that someone would need to fulfill basic domestic needs, like washing machines, mobile phones, or a cooker. They also can't take things required to work or study, providing that the value of the item isn't more than £1,350. While they can take your car, if it's depended upon to get to work, then they should leave you with it. If your car is a motability vehicle or has a blue badge, then again, it should be left. And, crucially, a bailiff can't take anything belonging to anyone who doesn't actually owe the debt, so, as the debtor's parent, they can't take anything that belongs to you. With this in mind, if you receive a letter from a bailiff, known as a notice of enforcement, informing you that a bailiff intends to visit, then, just like with an already cleared debt, be sure to respond immediately, ideally by phoning for the swiftest response. Let them know that the debt does not belong to you. Again, it can help to have some evidence such as bank statements on hand when you call them. What should I do if a bailiff does show up at my door? Always keep in mind that if the debt is not legally yours, a bailiff has virtually no power. They cannot force entry into your home or use a locksmith to get the front door open. Though keep in mind that a bailiff is allowed to enter your home through an unlocked door or window, so you should keep all your doors and windows locked. When a bailiff shows up at your door, you can deal with them through a closed door. First, ask them to prove that they are who they say they are by showing a valid form of ID. Once you know their name, then, as previously mentioned, you can look them up using the Certified Bailiffs Register. Once you're sure that they are who they say they are, ask them to show proof of what they think is owed. You could also ask to see a warrant, known as a writ, from the court. If the debt is owed by your son, these documents will have his name on them and not yours. Inform the bailiff of this fact and offer to prove who you are by showing them photo ID such as a driving licence. At this point, most bailiffs will realise that the debt isn't yours, and if your son doesn't live with you, then they should leave. If your son does live with you, then they do still have a reason to be there. But remember, the bailiff can still only take things that belong to your son, and even then, none of the essential items that I already mentioned. A really worrying question for many people is, can a bailiff force entry into your house? There's so much confusion about this, due in part to how much it gets dramatised in films and TV shows. The truth is, even if your son does live with you, you only have to let the bailiff in if they are allowed to force entry, which actually depends on the type of debt that's owed. Normally this is magistrates' court fines, tax debts, and defaulting on a controlled goods agreement. So be sure to ask if they are allowed to force entry. They should be able to show you a warrant or writ alongside court information with the details of the debt. Bailiffs can use reasonable force to enter, which means if they can't get in, they'll call a locksmith to get through the door. Somewhat less dramatic than kicking down doors or smashing windows like in a movie. Just to be clear, for many debts, bailiffs can't actually force their way into your home. It all depends on the type of debt. Credit card debt, catalogue debt, unpaid parking tickets, none of them allow bailiffs to enter your home, so make sure you are aware of what kind of debt is owed by your son. What should I do if a bailiff is trying to take something that belongs to me and not my son? On the first visit, they won't take anything straight away. Instead, they'll make an inventory. They'll be working out what they can take, what they can't take, and the rough value. It's called taking control of your goods. If your son is unable to make payments towards his debt, then they'll come back after 7 days and seize the items on the list to sell towards paying off the debt. You are allowed, and in fact I'd urge you, to review the list, being sure to ask that they remove any items from the list which belong to you or items which you believe they aren't allowed to take. Review the list before the bailiff leaves your home to make sure that it's correct. If you or a member of your family is struggling with debt, then there are options available here in the UK. Some are free to use and others will include fees, and each will have their own pros and cons. If you or somebody else wants to find out more about the debt solutions available, then we've created a really great form that you might be interested in checking out. Click the link below to get started and answer a few multiple choice questions, like the total amount of your debt, how many people you owe, your living situation, and we'll connect you with one of our trusted partners so you can find out more and take steps towards improving your financial situation.